dating back to World War II and collect the riches that may come along with it. Legend has it that a Nazi train filled with gold was lost 7 decades ago. But is it just that?
They said it was just a legend, a myth buried beneath wartime propaganda and wishful treasure hunting. But in 2015, a radar scan in a sleepy Polish town reignited the world's most dangerous question.
Well, there has been a frenzy of activity in Poland after the supposed discovery of a Nazi treasure train that went missing in 1945.
What did the Nazis really hide as they fled defeat? For decades, stories whispered of a train, loaded with stolen gold, priceless art, and something far more disturbing, sealed away forever.
According to legend, in the waning days of World War II, as the Soviet army closed in, Nazi soldiers filled a train with gold, gems, and other treasures.
The evidence was dismissed. The truth, suppressed. Until now. The Nazi gold train was real. And it was worse than we thought. And what lies beneath the Owl Mountains may not just change history. It could rewrite it. A train that vanished into the mountains. In the final months of World War II, as Nazi Germany collapsed under the pressure of advancing Soviet forces, something strange happened on the railway lines of Lower Silesia. A heavily guarded train, rumored to be carrying tons of gold, precious stones, priceless artworks, and potentially something even more sinister, disappeared between Breslau, modern-day Wrocław, and Waldenburg, now Wałbrzych. It was never seen again. The train was said to have vanished near the Owl Mountains, a rugged and forested region in southwestern Poland. This wasn't just any train. Witnesses described it as armored, heavily secured, and unlike anything seen before. According to multiple accounts, including a 15-year-old Polish boy named Gotthard Welz, the train was sighted moving west in the dead of night in January 1945, just before the Red Army encircled the area. And then, nothing. It was like the train just vanished. It didn't take long for the rumors to begin about what such a heavily guarded train might be carrying, and for years people hunted for evidence that the Nazi gold train existed. But it all seemed in vain. Despite Nazi atrocities being well known, making the existence of such a train highly likely, nothing beyond the eyewitnesses' reports existed, making the train fade into urban legend. It wasn't the first time rumors of Nazi plunder being hidden in secret underground bunkers surfaced. But this story had a different weight. The Nazis were known for engineering vast networks of tunnels, bunkers, and escape routes across Europe. In this case, the suspected hiding place was close to Książ Castle, one of Hitler's projected Führer headquarters, and home to the sprawling but incomplete tunnel network known as Project Ries. These tunnels, carved deep into the Owl Mountains using slave labor, were abandoned hastily as the Soviets closed in. Many entrances were blasted shut, and if a train did pull into one of these underground platforms, it's entirely plausible that it could have been sealed off forever, intentionally. Over the years, maps emerged. Some showed sightings branching off from the main Wrocław, Wałbrzych railway line. Others showed incomplete but clearly defined tunnel entrances. Retired miner Tadeusz Słowikowski believed the train lay at exactly the spot where two amateur explorers, Piotr Koper and Andreas Richter, would later claim to have located it. He had received information years earlier from a former German railway official who hinted that the Nazi gold train had, indeed, entered a tunnel and never emerged. Still, no definitive proof ever surfaced. Just whispers, maps, and rumors passed down from one generation to the next. And yet the belief persisted. The Nazi gold train was out there. Somewhere, hidden beneath the soil of Lower Silesia, buried under decades of debris and denial. For many, this wasn't just a tale of stolen riches. It was a symbol of the Third Reich's final days, a desperate attempt to hide the scale of its crimes, to bury not only gold and art, but the terrifying legacy of its actions. A train that carried more than just treasure. A train that carried the ghosts of a dying regime. And in 2015, the world would once again be forced to reckon with that legacy. The 2015 discovery that shook the world. In the summer of 2015, an announcement came out of Poland that electrified the world. Two amateur explorers, Piotr Koper, a Polish building contractor, and Andreas Richter, a German geologist, claimed they finally found it. After decades of dead ends, speculation, and hoaxes, they presented what they said was hard evidence, ground-penetrating radar images that showed the clear outline of a 100-meter-long train buried beneath a railway embankment near the 65th kilometer marker on the WWII line. Their lawyer released a carefully worded statement. The pair would only reveal the precise location to the government in exchange for a 10% finder's fee. The secrecy, the timing, and the confidence with which they spoke set off a global media storm. But there was also skepticism. The men seemed eager to profit off the goods of a regime the world would forever despise. However, the search for the Nazi gold train had never turned up any evidence. This was as close as anyone had ever been to discovering if it was real. Within days, the site was sealed off by Polish authorities. Armed guards, police, and military engineers swarmed the area. The Polish deputy culture minister, Piotr Żuchowski, publicly declared he was 99% certain that the radar images showed a train, not a geological formation, not a hoax, a train. News outlets from around the world descended on WWII. Spectators, treasure hunters, and skeptics gathered near the forested site, where a stretch of rail curved toward a suspiciously raised embankment. Television crews camped out in the woods. The excitement was palpable. For the first time, the legendary Nazi gold train felt tangible, real. A piece of history was about to be uncovered, revealing even more horrors by the Nazis. For almost 70 years, the train had been a myth, but it was about to become very real. Koper and Richter revealed that the radar scans had been taken using a KS-700 system, which indicated a long, metallic, rectangular object buried about 50 meters below the surface. The location fit neatly with older maps, witness statements, and theories. Some said they had identified ventilation shafts, a sealed tunnel entrance, even signs of a secondary chamber nearby. It was clear why the Polish deputy culture minister had been so sure that the long-lost train had finally been found. Everything aligned so neatly. But it wasn't just treasure that caught people's imagination. Speculation grew over what else could be down there. Weapons, advanced Nazi technology, even nuclear research. Theories began to spiral, and the mystery only deepened as the military cleared the area for mines and traps left over from the war. When the Polish army completed its sweep, excavation permits were granted. Scientific teams began scanning, measuring, and drilling. The hype reached fever pitch. For the first time in many years, a new piece of evidence was about to enter the story. Everything the world thought they knew about the Nazis could change overnight. The discovery, or the illusion of one, was enough to transform WWII overnight. The town's tourism numbers exploded. The Nazi gold train was back in the headlines, and this time, it wasn't going away. But what exactly had the Nazis left behind? Was it just a desperate attempt to hide their art and jewelry before the regime collapsed, or were they hiding something much worse? What the Nazis left behind. The idea of a train full of treasure might sound like a fantasy, but history tells a different story. The Nazis didn't just wage war on the battlefield, they plundered Europe on a colossal scale. Art, currency, jewelry, religious artifacts, and entire museum collections were looted from cities across the continent. If the Nazi gold train had been found, it was highly likely that the treasures within wouldn't just be Nazi possessions. They would be riches from the groups of people they had spent years persecuting. In May 1945, as Germany fell, American troops discovered a train filled with stolen art in Hitler's retreat at Berchtesgaden. This wasn't an isolated incident. The Allies recovered an estimated 5 million looted items, with over 4 million confirmed to have been stolen or extorted. And yet, vast portions of this haul were never found. One of the most famous missing treasures is the Amber Room, looted from the Catherine Palace near St. Petersburg. The room was dismantled and transported by the Nazis to Königsberg during the war, then vanished without a trace. Some believe it was destroyed in an air raid. Others insist it was loaded onto a train, the very train now suspected to be buried beneath the Owl Mountains. Hitler's deputy, Hermann Göring, was one of the most prolific art thieves in modern history. He boasted openly about his looting campaigns, amassing enough masterpieces to fill entire museums. Hitler himself envisioned a super museum in Linz, Austria, and his private collection included rare pieces stolen from Jewish collectors, galleries, and universities. There's even precedent for a literal gold train. In 1945, U.S. forces intercepted a train in Austria carrying vast quantities of gold, silver, and artwork stolen from Hungarian Jews. This included 52 boxes of gold and diamonds, over 1,500 boxes of silver, and even the reserves of an entire national bank. Much of that treasure mysteriously vanished after the Americans seized it. Rather than saving it and returning it to the rightful communities, it seemed the horrors of the Nazis repeated themselves. So, when stories of a buried Nazi train surfaced in 2015, they weren't without historical foundation. The Nazis had the motive, the means, and the opportunity. They had built elaborate underground bunkers and tunnel networks to shield their stolen wealth from the advancing Allies. These were not rumors. These were documented strategies. Could one of those trains have simply disappeared into the mountains, sealed behind a wall of explosives and decades of silence? Why had Project Reese even started, if not to covertly transport stolen goods? Beneath the Owl Mountains, Project Reese. To understand how a train could vanish, you have to understand what lay beneath the surface. Project Reese, German for giant, was a massive construction effort launched by the Nazis in 1943 in the Owl Mountains. It was one of Hitler's most ambitious undertakings, a sprawling underground complex designed to house the Führer's command center and relocate key industrial operations underground, safe from Allied bombing raids. Built using forced labor from concentration camps, the tunnel systems were extensive, brutal, and unfinished. Many of the workers died in the process, part of what Nazi officials called annihilation through labor. Their bodies were replaced as easily as machine parts. The vast number of prisoners of war and concentration camp prisoners meant they were never short of a fresh batch of workers, as and when they needed them. Even today, the full extent of Project Reese remains unknown. Only a portion of the complex has been mapped or made accessible. Massive shafts, multi-level tunnels, and cathedral-sized chambers exist throughout the mountains. And then there are the sealed doors, blasted entrances, tunnels choked with rubble that no one dares to clear. Undoubtedly, there are secrets within Owl Mountains that the world may never know about, making it the perfect place for the Nazi gold train. Experts believe these unfinished tunnels were capable of hiding entire trains. Satellite imagery and wartime maps indicate several suspicious alignments between known tunnel systems and nearby rail lines. Geophysicist Krzysztof Szpakowski, who has studied the region for decades, found multiple anomalies: caves, shafts, air vents. Why would the Nazis need such massive subterranean spaces? Some say they were relocating weapons factories. Others believe they were building new weapons: long-range missiles, jet fighters, even the components of a nuclear program. One site, the Osovka complex, includes a vast, fortified underground space with rail access. Nearby is Książ Castle, which was also being retrofitted into a Nazi headquarters. A tunnel is believed to connect the castle directly to the railway line. Could that have been the final destination of the Nazi gold train? There's one more clue: the use of Hitler's personal train, the Führersonderzug. This mobile command center often operated from hidden locations across Europe. Was the Wałbrzych area ever a hub for such operations? It's not confirmed. But what is known is that the Nazis poured concrete, manpower, and secrecy into these mountains, then left in a hurry, destroying documentation and sealing off access. Which begs the question, what were they hiding? Too many clues to dismiss. Over the decades, too many clues have emerged to ignore. Eyewitnesses have repeatedly described strange train movements in early 1945. Civilians, miners, and even railway workers recalled a heavily guarded train traveling west, then vanishing. Retired miner Tadeusz Słowikowski was so convinced of its location that he spent decades researching maps and testimonies. His theories aligned exactly with Koper and Richter's scans. In 2015, when the site was finally investigated, radar did not just detect a large metallic object. It indicated regular man-made shapes buried underground, potentially boxcars or compartments. A follow-up scan even identified multiple cavities in the rock. Could this be the hidden tunnel? And yet, skeptics remained. Professor Janusz Madej, head of a team from the Krakow Mining Academy, argued that the anomalies were natural. Richter and Koper disagreed, publicly and repeatedly. Their scans were interpreted by independent analysts who also noted strong electromagnetic fields in the same area. The deeper you go into the case, the harder it is to dismiss the overlapping evidence. The radar images, the historical records, the eyewitnesses, the Nazi-built infrastructure. Even satellite images showed suspicious terrain distortions matching locations noted on wartime German maps. There's also the matter of a deathbed confession that allegedly triggered Koper and Richter's search. While unconfirmed, it involved a former SS officer who admitted knowing the location of a train that had been sealed inside a tunnel near Wałbrzych. The confession added yet another layer of credibility to the already growing mountain of clues. Taken alone, any one of these pieces might seem inconclusive, but together, they tell a compelling story, one that refuses to die. But it may also point to the idea that the Nazi gold train was carrying something much worse than just art and jewels. What if it wasn't just gold? The legend of the Nazi gold train has always centered on treasure, gold bars, jewels, priceless artworks. But as new evidence surfaced, some began to wonder if the truth was even darker. It's probably fair to assume that the goods within the train were stolen from the people the Nazis persecuted: Jews, Roma, academics, gay people, disabled people, and the many other groups they targeted. This in itself is shocking. The train wasn't just an attempt to hide Nazi treasures. It was hiding treasures that never belonged to them in the first place. But there's a precedent within the regime, which could point to the Nazi gold train being about more than just wealth. There are persistent theories that the cargo may have included personal effects stripped from victims of the Holocaust. Clothing, suitcases, gold fillings, wedding rings, even gold teeth. Items cataloged and looted systematically in concentration camps. The Nazis were methodical in how they extracted value from human life, and by 1945, many of the death camps were being evacuated in haste. Eyewitnesses from the time described military convoys that moved not just valuables, but unusual freight, wooden crates, body-sized containers, and sealed wagons escorted by SS units. If the Nazi gold train was among these convoys, it's possible it contained evidence of crimes the regime was desperate to hide, evidence that needed to be buried permanently. And then there's the theory of scientific or military secrets. By the end of the war, German scientists were working feverishly on advanced weapons and even nuclear technology. Project Reese and surrounding complexes in the Owl Mountains have long been suspected of housing components of these programs. Some speculate that the train may have carried radioactive materials, experimental machinery, or documentation related to weapons research. When Soviet forces moved in, they conducted thorough, but largely undocumented searches of these tunnels. Reports later surfaced that Russian scientists removed crates from the region under armed guard. Their contents remain classified. In this version of the story, the Nazi gold train is more than a treasure trove. It's a mobile vault of horror, a repository of everything the Third Reich hoped to keep from Allied hands. Some investigators even theorized that the train was never meant to be found. It wasn't just hidden. It was buried deliberately, entombed with whatever secrets it carried. Not to keep wealth away from the enemy, but to stop anyone from finding the horrors the Nazi regime conducted. And if that's true, then, worse than we thought, doesn't begin to describe the train. But will we ever know the truth about the Nazis desperately tried to hide? The truth beneath the earth. In late September 2015, after weeks of speculation, Polish military engineers began clearing trees and inspecting the suspected site. Sappers checked for mines and booby traps. The forest floor was carefully surveyed. The world watched. Drones hovered. News teams broadcast live. And then, nothing. No grand unveiling. No crates of Nazi gold pulled from the earth. No moment of historical reckoning. But crucially, no closure either. The excavations were shallow, reaching only a meter or so below the surface in the initial sweep. Experts and independent observers questioned whether the effort had gone far enough. Richter and Koper remained adamant that their scans showed something substantial, buried much deeper. Many began to push for further excavation. The initial blast could have buried tons of earth on top of the train, as well as any rockfall in preceding years, adding to the pile. What the authorities were doing didn't seem enough. They pointed to missed excavation points, noted discrepancies in terrain data, and pushed for renewed access. Local authorities, meanwhile, were caught between scientific caution and the growing momentum of legend. WWII's mayor acknowledged the global media attention, citing a 44% increase in tourism since the story broke. Even skeptics began to concede that the legend itself had value: cultural, financial, and historical. Plans were floated for a museum, a memorial site, and even naming a roundabout after the discoverers. The Polish state railways later allowed private excavation efforts, and by 2016 a new dig was launched, funded by volunteers and private sponsors. Again, anomalies were found: cavities, shafts, irregular structures. But as deeper drilling loomed, permits grew harder to obtain. Costs soared, and enthusiasm, at least from officials, waned. Koper pressed on. In 2017, a third round of scanning revealed 7 new cavities beneath the surface. He prepared for deeper drilling, undeterred by opposition. Richter eventually left the team, but Koper vowed to continue the search alone. The area, after all, remains riddled with sealed tunnels, collapsed entrances, and buried secrets. Multiple tunnel systems in the Owl Mountains have never been fully mapped. Some shafts descend 50 meters into darkness. Others are blocked by rubble, concrete, or deliberately destroyed entry points. Whether or not the gold train lies at kilometer 65 remains an open question. No one has ever gotten the permits to drill that deep. But few experts are willing to declare the legend dead. The ground is too unstable. The maps are too suspicious. The region's Nazi past too layered in intentional mystery. But all evidence points to the fact that the Nazi gold train was real, and it was much worse than we thought. So what's down there? A buried train, a vault of war crimes, a final escape route, or all of the above? But there's another pressing question. If the truth is ever discovered, should it become a place of learning? A place where people can study the horrors of the past to make sure they're never repeated? Or does it just risk becoming a part of the dark tourism world where people visit out of morbid curiosity? The final twist: tourism, money, and the real treasure. By the end of 2016, WWII had changed. The town that once lived in the shadow of World War II now stood in the spotlight of one of its most enduring mysteries. Hotels filled, tour buses arrived. Local businesses named dishes and drinks after the gold train. Merchandise flew off shelves. The legend had become an economy. And to some, that was proof enough. The regional government calculated that media coverage alone was worth hundreds of millions in free promotion. Whether the explorers find anything or not, one official admitted, the gold train has already arrived. They finally found it, even if it's not what they hoped for. But that's not where the story ends. In 2019, Piotr Koper made an unexpected discovery. While working on renovations in a palace near Wrocław, he uncovered a series of priceless 16th-century wall paintings hidden behind a false wall. It wasn't gold, but it proved something crucial. There are still things buried beneath Poland that no one knows about. And the tunnels in the mountains? Still there, still largely unexamined. Many remain sealed, either by Nazi demolition crews, the Soviets, or later Polish authorities. Some were flooded. Others were filled in deliberately to prevent looting or trespassing. Their full contents remain unknown. Investigators, historians, and amateur explorers continue to theorize. Some believe the train was moved deeper underground, into the vast Rees tunnel complex or another, yet undiscovered shaft. Others believe it's still exactly where the radar scans placed it, waiting just a few meters too deep for the first excavations to uncover. The mystery is alive because it fits too perfectly into the historical gaps, the chaos of the war's final days, the industrial-scale looting, the missing treasures, the incomplete tunnels, the unverifiable stories of convoys and secrecy. The truth remains buried, both literally and metaphorically. And so we come full circle. The Nazi gold train isn't just a rumor. It's a mirror held up to the darkest chapters of modern history. A warning, a riddle, a reminder of what men can hide when they think no one is looking. Whatever lies beneath that embankment, gold, horrors, or something worse, one thing is certain: the Nazi gold train was real, and it was worse than we thought. Do you think the tunnels in Owl Mountains will ever be fully excavated? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.